Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever time it is where you are. Welcome to Beach Walk Blog. Today we're going to be talking about junk miles. I love this topic. And the reason why I love this topic is because there's so many opinions on it. Now, I want to start this off by saying that if you are just exercising and you're not using running to be a better runner, i.e. you're not training for races, and you're not following a plan, of course, then junk miles don't occur. Because let's just dive straight into it. What are junk miles? Well, I think we've got to start with that. Do I follow a plan or not? And if you don't follow a plan, then you really just can't have any junk miles, because every mile is just a mile of running. It's exercise, it's getting your heart rate up. It's just exercise. That's all it is. So there can't be any junk. There can't be anything that's not what it is. It's just exercise. Now, when it comes to training, we've talked about this before. We have to define the difference between training and exercise. So exercise is really just anything that gets your heart rate up, that's movement. Anything movement that gets your heart rate up. And why do I say anything that's movement? Well, because caffeine will increase your heart rate, so will stress. So will watching a scary movie. There's lots of things that will increase your heart rate that don't actually give you any form of exercise. Okay, movement. So movement with an increase in heart rate. There we go. So if you're not following a plan, then you're not training. And if you're not training, then there can't be any junk miles. So you have to be following a plan and actually training to be performing junk miles. So are there junk miles? I'm going with yes, there are. And here's where I kind of have to define it a little bit, because we've just said you have to be following a plan. Well, if you're following a plan, then you're following the plan, right? If you have a plan and you're not following it, then you're not following it. So what are you doing? Why have you got the plan? And we could go off on random tangents with that one, but we're not going to. We're going to stick with the junk miles. So if you have a plan but you're not following it, then you're not following it. Then there can be junk miles, and you're not following the plan. So there you go. Let's just stop it right there. But if you're following the plan, then there are no junk miles, because you're following the plan, right? So if your plan says go out and run 6 miles at whatever speed, whatever pace, whatever inclines, hills, whatever intensity, and you go and do that, then you're going to get a training effect from that. There's going to be a loading and an adaptation, of course, if you recover, in which case you would have to be following the plan, which then the next day and the next day takes into account whatever load, whatever intensity you put upon yourself the previous day and the previous day and the previous day, etc. So the plan is there for a reason. So if your plan says go out and run a 6-mile tempo run, it's going to be close to or at your threshold. That's going to need some kind of recovery after. Not necessarily rest, but recovery, because you're going to have to recover from what you did. So if you go out the following day and do another 6-mile tempo, probably not going to do it as well as you did the first time, and therefore that becomes junk miles, right? So because you didn't follow the plan, because the plan would never say 2 6-mile tempo runs on consecutive days. That wouldn't happen. No plan would do that. That would just be a stupid plan. But what it might do is it might give you some mileage at threshold in one day, and then the next day some mileage at threshold. That would be okay, but it wouldn't give you 2 6-mile threshold runs. That wouldn't be on the plan. No plan would do that. So that would be probably you doing junk mileage, just because your ego says that I want to do 2 6-mile tempo runs, right? So you have to have a plan to be, therefore, not following the plan to do junk mileage. Now we could just cut this one right there and that would be the answer, but I'm going to go a little bit further, because some people say, oh, it's just anything that's slow, isn't it? Anything that's slow. No, it isn't anything that's slow. That's wrong. It's not just anything that's slow, because like I just said, you could have something that's 2 high intensity training sessions back to back, and that might then create an effect on the following day that doesn't allow you to follow the plan. So if you went too hard because you went off plan, that was junk mileage. Now, if you're building up your base, i.e. you're back into base building mode, or you're a relatively new runner, pretty much anything you do is going to have a training effect, and that involves easy mileage as well as hard, high intensity mileage that you put in as well. So there's a need, if you're an endurance runner, there's an absolute need for slow mileage, for slower runs. So let's define slow. Well, that's a tough one, because one person's slow is going to be another person's fast. So you can't really say that slow mileage. It's slow mileage is absolutely needed, beneficial, warranted, part of a good training plan, because it could be zone 2 running, could be relatively comfortable paced running, could be low end zone 2 running, which is going to be, pretty pedestrian pace compared to your high intensity runs. But it could also, if your fitness allows, it could be a recovery run. Now, if your fitness allows. Why do I say if your fitness allows? Well, here's the reason. Because a lot of people can't do recovery runs. They're not fit enough to do recovery runs. And they are really fitness dictating. Because if you're not fit enough to run in your recovery zone, then it's not a recovery run. And therefore, and I see this a lot on the socials, is, oh, I barely break into a trot and I'm already in my zone 3 or zone 4, right? So firstly, are your zones correct? Have you actually done a max heart rate test or a threshold test, a field test, or are you just guessing those zones based off a poor guesstimate, i.e. 220 minus your age? That's crap. We're not going to go there. Worst thing you can do is really just guesstimate. Well, it's not even a guesstimate, it's a guess. So don't do that. Do a field test. If you don't know what a field test is, Google it, find out, and you'll get more information from that field test. The data is going to show you what you should be doing for your zones. That's cool, isn't it? Look at those birds. So yeah, slow running is not junk miles. It's absolutely not junk miles. And people that say that, well, they're either looking at it from the wrong perspective, i.e. maybe they're a sprinting coach. Oh, slow miles are crap. No, you're an endurance runner. If you are an endurance runner, you need to do slow mileage. You need to do some slow mileage. That's what building up endurance is all about. And like I said, for a lot of people who can't even break into a trot without hitting zone 3 or zone 4, then those slow miles are going to put you into your aerobic zone. And that's what you want. You're working on your aerobic capacity. So why would easy running be junk miles? That's crazy. You've gotta, if you're going to be training for endurance, and let's say you're going to run a half marathon, well, or a marathon, or a 10k, whatever. You need to do those easy miles, and those easy miles are not junk miles if you're following the plan, and the plan says do easy mileage as a part of a well-rounded training plan. Those easy miles, or slow in quotes, slow miles are not junk miles if they're on your plan. But of course that goes back to the first point, which is you have to be following a plan. So you have to have a plan firstly, which is where I see so many runners going wrong. They don't have a plan, so therefore they're just exercising. So every day becomes a I must run, I cannot take a day off, I'm going to lose fitness. No, you're not going to lose fitness. You're not going to lose fitness. In fact, how are you going to do those harder sessions? How are you going to do those harder sessions if you're not recovered for them? Right? You need to be recovered for those high intensity sessions because they're high intensity. They have a huge demand. If you're not recovered, you can't perform well, and you must perform well in those high intensity sessions, right? They're all about performance. That's what they are. They're kind of like a little mini race. They're like a little mini race because they're high performance. That's what a race is. It's a high performance. It's a high performance run. So, you know, a well-rounded program is going to give you, a well-rounded plan is going to give you lower intensity mileage, because if you're an endurance runner, that's what you need. Aerobic running, low intensity in your aerobic zone. It's going to give you the low intensity running, and that's what you need. It's also going to give you, when you have a decent aerobic base, that might be 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever, it will give you some high intensity mileage, right? And that's also good. High intensity mileage is good in the right proportion. If it's on your plan, if you're following the plan, then it's good. But, you know, going out and running hard on multiple days without recovery is probably not going to give you the result that you want. All right, so just one more point that I want to make here. This is going to be a short one because it's a very specific subject. You can also overload with low intensity, right? You can also overload with low intensity, because if you're only used to running, say 6-7 miles or whatever, it could be 3, and you go out and run 5 miles slower, or you run 10 miles slower, right? You've just run more mileage than what you're used to at a slower pace. That's absolutely going to have a training effect. Of course. How many steps do you take per mile? Well, if your stride length is 1 meter, you're taking 1,600 steps per mile. That's 1,600 repetitions. That's 1,600 times you're loading your body with whatever it is, 2 to 6 times your body weight, 2 to 10 times your body weight, depending on how your biomechanics are. You're going to be loading yourself with a lot of force. So 1,600 reps per mile if you're running with a 1 meter stride length. A little bit more than that, but you know, just keeping it simple here. There's absolutely going to be a training effect from those slower miles. And also, if you're a marathon runner, or if you're training for a marathon or anything, you know, 10k beyond, you need that mileage. That mileage has value. But again, if you are not following a plan, there can't be any junk mileage because you don't have a plan. If you are following a plan, then yes, there can be junk mileage. Junk mileage is off plan. Okay, so yes, you can have too much high intensity work in there. You can also have too much low intensity work in there as well, and it becomes junk mileage. So it's on both ends of the spectrum. It is on both ends of that spectrum. All right, so I hope that kind of helps clear up some of this. What's junk miles? Nah, there's no junk miles. Yeah, there's absolutely junk miles. Well, in my opinion, if you're following a plan, anything that goes off plan, junk miles. All right, pretty simple, that one. Have a great day. Short beach walk vlog today. Look out for the next one. Hope you enjoyed this one. Give me a like, give me a share, give me a subscribe. Take care, have a great day.